Okay. Call to order the regular board meeting of Tuesday, August 25th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Accavetti.
Here.
Treasurer LaFata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg is here. Clerk Berry is here.
Let me get caught up on my board screen here. Item number 4 is presentation, 4A.
Item 4A is a presentation by Cannabis Committee co-chairs Clerk Berry and Trustee Joseph. Thank you, Board. For purposes of the ease of the public to see me, I have come down off the dais. I appreciate your indulgence there, and I'll be doing the presentation. And I would hope that Trustee Joseph will also be making comments as well as we go through the slides. The Chesterfield Township Cannabis Committee was formed right after 2018 when Proposal 1 was adopted by the voters of the state of Michigan. The committee's purpose at that time was to investigate the options for commercial cannabis in Chesterfield Township and then make a subsequent report to the board. That report was prepared and ready to be presented in March prior to the COVID-19 outbreak. So we are now presenting it at this time. This is a brief history of commercial cannabis as it relates to state legalization. You can see that Michigan approved medical cannabis, I believe it's 2006. Unfortunately, I don't have my glasses. And then recreational and commercial cannabis was approved in 2018 by Proposal 1 by the voters. Legal possession and commercial sales of cannabis. This is a breakdown of the counties in Michigan that allow for the various options as well as percentages of approval ratings in the state of Michigan. This is just for data and background information. This is some of the information that the Cannabis Committee looked at. In addition to this type of data, we were also able to interview stakeholders, law enforcement, regulatory as well as legislative personnel at the state level as well as locally to provide you a bit of a comprehensive analysis of what we found. And then at the end of the presentation, we will also be giving you the options as the committee saw it for Chesterfield moving forward. This next slide shows the approval rating here in Chesterfield. Chesterfield Township approved Proposal 1 by a rate of 58% yes. And that is a bit higher than the county average, which was 55%, being Macomb County average of approval of Proposal 1, which was the legalization and commercial sales of cannabis. Some of our local communities that have opted in, and of course there are many throughout the state, which are all available on LARA's website for your review. But here in here in Macomb County, we have Centerline, Mount Clemens, Harrison Township, Lenox, and Warren, who have all opted in. And then some of the other ones that I have included are some of the Oakland County communities as well. Again, that full listing is available for your review on the State of Michigan LARA website. So Chesterfield Township options. The Cannabis Committee, after their thorough review and almost a year, actually it was more than a year, of deliberation, discussion, and presentations, has come to the conclusion that Chesterfield has 3 options. Option 1 is simply to do nothing, to not allow any commercial sale of cannabis or any of the associated licenses, essentially the status quo. Chesterfield Township currently does have that would disallow any type of cannabis operations. And that was adopted by the board right after the approval of medical marijuana. So that ordinance has been on the books for quite a while. We may keep the status quo. That means do absolutely nothing, and then nothing would change in that regard. Our second option would be to allow all license types, and there are the 5 license types listed there offered by the state. They have added an additional one as well, which is consumption clubs and events. However, the 5 main license types are grows, processors, testing, provisioning, and transport. The second option would be to allow all of those licenses in an unlimited number and essentially not regulated by zoning. What I think Trustee Joseph has called in the past kind of the wild, wild west, allowing everything for everyone. Option 3 would be to allow some or all license types, but in a highly restricted, regulated, and very much zoning controlled environment. That would allow the township board essentially to have a lot of control and oversight, as well as our departments having oversight into whichever license types or operations we choose to adopt. And the board would have a considerable amount of input as to those restrictions and regulations and provisions of the ordinance in the crafting of the ordinance or the adoption of the ordinance. Following that, the regulatory piece would essentially be an administrative function when it comes to actual licensing. We would be looking more at an administrative function rather than a legislative one. Just to give you an idea, the Cannabis Committee did ask our planning administrator, Jonathan Palin, and our planning consultant, Rod Arroyo from Giffords-Webster, to put together some renderings just so that we could get a pictorial image of what it would look like if cannabis were to be allowed in Chesterfield under various conditions. And so what I've done is I've included those maps for your review. One is an overall map, and that is all zones, including agricultural, commercial, and industrial zoning. And this is what the zoning map would look like under the conditions. I believe this is a 500-foot buffer zone from residential, from churches, schools, rehabilitation facilities, senior facilities, and various other types of concerning facilities or areas that there may be levels of concern about this particular operation or use. You also have various other maps. This is all zones, but then you have the breakdown of each zone: agricultural, industrial, and they call those alternate maps, all zones for agricultural, industrial, and commercial, just so that you can get a sense of what those would be in the various zones and what kind of usage would be involved. As you can see, Chesterfield Township has a considerable amount of property and square and acreage that would be available for this type of use, depending on whether it's a 500 or 1,000-foot buffer. So those are somewhat industry standard, and they were recommended by our planning consultant as some options to look at. The zoning ordinance itself would be the map. So although we do not have any regulatory ordinance to share with you tonight, the reason we do not is because the Cannabis Committee at this time is now looking for what our direction is. And you can see here there are a couple of more maps. Alternates 1 and 2. 1 is a 500-foot buffer zone. 2 is the 1,000-foot buffer zone. And those are the various zoning descriptions. And then I think if we'll go to the end, again, that's commercial zones. You can see there's not an awful lot in commercial zones. We have a considerable amount in industrial and far more in agricultural. So at this time, the Cannabis Committee is at a crossroads. We have now completed the investigative portion of our responsibilities as dictated by the board in our creation, but now we are looking for some direction from the board in terms of what the next steps would be. And If we are looking at option 1, the action item would be to dissolve the committee before it has fulfilled its purpose. If the board chooses not to take any action whatsoever and keep the status quo, then the Cannabis Committee has done their job. Under option number 2, the action item would be to direct the Cannabis Committee to craft an ordinance and work with legal counsel to draft ordinance provisions that would satisfy those objectives. And that is very much, you would not see so much in the way of zoning. In all likelihood, the zoning maps would be revisited. You would also see a very light regulatory ordinance as well, if the board chose to go that direction. Under option 3, which is the more highly regulated, restricted, very much zone controlled option, again, the action item that the committee would ask from the board is to direct the committee to proceed with legal counsel to draft an ordinance for board review that would be highly regulated, restricted, very much zone controlled again. This would provide a considerable amount of oversight by the township, and it would also limit far more, in all likelihood, the applicants for a cannabis license should Chesterfield decide to go forward. We are not asking the board to make any decisions on cannabis. Clearly, the committee would have far more work to do and then return to the board after we've been given our direction in terms of what job we need to do next. Oftentimes into my office, we receive calls virtually every week asking if there's another cannabis committee meeting, what the status is. And unfortunately, we've been able to tell them until the committee is directed by the board, we do not have any direction, and so therefore have not had a meeting. Of course, COVID certainly impacted that as well, but more so, the cannabis committee needs to know the direction so that we know how to prepare our agendas and therefore effectively bring to the board something that either they would like to see or we would need dissolution so that we no longer have a requirement to meet. So that is the cannabis presentation for tonight. I know we have a lot on our agenda, and I thank the board very much for their indulgence and the public's attention. Thank you.
Clerk Barry, if I could just add a couple of things to the presentation.
Please, absolutely.
I'll just do it from here if that's okay. The areas that I appreciate you hitting on, options 1, 2, and 3, discussed in great length during our cannabis committee meetings for the last year. As clerk laid out very nicely, option 1 is simply to do nothing, to keep our current policy, which is the just say no. We have taken a pass on any license approvals, and we did that during the formation of the Cannabis Committee. That was the objective of the Cannabis Committee, which was to provide more information back to the board. I'd like to touch on a couple of things that we discussed during our deliberations, pro and con with each option. So doing nothing, there really was only one pro there that I think we identified, and that is it gives relief to politicians who are worried about making a decision on a hot button issue, because there really is nothing advantageous from the perspective of the committee to do nothing, just to let it go. What that will bring about is we've had some very influential and some very reputable business people participate in this for the last year, and simply what will happen is a lawsuit will be brought, and there will be a request to go into business in what is a legal product. So as the clerk pointed out, our community overwhelmingly saw marijuana as a just any other product. It's a legal product, and therefore people will pursue their rights to bring a business forward. The other thing that is a real negative associated with option 1 for me and for the panel as we discussed it is while we are digging in and doing a just say no to marijuana, our neighbors around us are taking advantage of the revenue associated with marijuana. And cannabis is big business, and I don't know the benefit of having all of our neighbors to the north, south, West having appropriate and very detailed cannabis allowance in their community. So whatever the negatives that you think or perceive to be associated with cannabis, um, if it's on your border and you get none of the revenue, you miss both. So for the committee, there was some concerns about a missed opportunity. Option two, which we dubbed the Wild West, is to allow it and then allow the market, if you will, to dictate the strongest business owner, and that is the kind of purest sort of way to just open it up and have unlimited license, unlimited provisioning centers, grows, testing, and let the market sort it out. Uh, the committee was a little bit concerned about that because what ends up happening, and we've seen it in a number of communities, with maybe Ann Arbor being the exception, but I think we all agreed that our community is not Ann Arbor. So that model probably won't work here. The difficulty there is we run the risk of having a lot of, well, just being blunt, I think the committee was very interested in presentations from companies that brought in provisioning centers that looked like places that you would go and buy your iPhone, that looked like an Apple store, as opposed to the distribution centers that looked like you could get a suntan there, and you could maybe get a new cell phone and then pick up some marijuana. So there's a couple of different models out there, and option two doesn't allow us the ability to really differentiate. Option three seemed to be the area that the committee had the most interest in. It is probably the most tedious, that requires the most amount of legal review, because as we've seen in other municipalities and cities in our county, Warren is probably a great example of a place that it went horribly wrong. And that had to do with the selection process and the criteria used to select the number of licenses and so forth. So trying to thread the needle with option three, which is to get in businesses and provisioning centers that are more palatable, is a real that's a real trick. I mean, that is a very, very difficult thing. But there were some organizations that brought in models that were vertically integrated, and in short, basically what they're talking about is they handle their product from beginning to end. So they're not purchasing marijuana, cannabis from alternate vendors and then selling it. There were some really very interesting business models presented from some incredibly sharp people. Option three seemed to have the most traction, but again, it has the most work to be done. And as I said at the last cannabis committee, we were prepared to bring a motion forward to the board. I believe that it was in favor of pursuing option three. It was not only, unfortunately, COVID that shut down everything, but it was from a timeliness standpoint, we thought far enough out from the election to, and I don't want to overplay the point, but this has been a hot button issue in every community that it's in. Being perfectly blunt, I'm not afraid to say I think option three is the area that we should go. I think we should really look at that in a very deep and meaningful way and bring our attorney in. I think we're at the point that that's where we need to go. Option one is always going to be available to us. If the board does not like option three, then the board has somebody on the board can make the motion that we do nothing, and then we disband the cannabis committee and we go that route. Tonight, I am in favor of option three, and I will be asking for an action item to send this. Clerk Berry, I differ from you just a bit, and I think that what we need before we engage fully our attorneys, one, that he's been present at the last few, that we bring him into the next cannabis committee meeting with a very specific directive on what it is that we are asking for. As you laid out in the planning commission, there were so many setbacks from schools, churches. There's very limited areas in the township where it works, and bringing our attorney in is the next step. So At this point tonight, I realize we're still in the presentation phase. Procedurally, you tell me how we would like to go, but I would like to bring an action item that sends the recommendation from the committee to the attorney I don't know that we're prepared to draft an ordinance without a cannabis committee meeting so that our members can ask specifically. But I do believe it's time to ask our attorney to weigh in on this and give us some direction. So open to feedback on the motion itself. But I would like to see that added to the agenda when we get to that point.
I'll turn it over to Clerk Barry, but when it comes time to approve the consent agenda, it sounds like if you want an addendum, that'd be a time to add that action item at that moment.
Great, thank you.
Any other board discussion on the presentation only? Thank you, Clerk Barry and Trustee Joseph. Moving on to number 5, department reports. Are there any departments that wish to update the board or the community? Trustee DeMink.
This is from the Parks and Rec Department, please. The American Red Cross is hosting a blood drive this Friday, August 28th at the Township offices from 12 to 6 p.m. Walk-ins are welcome and masks are required for entry. On Friday, September 25th from 6 to 7:30 p.m., bundle up and join us for an outdoor concert featuring Sonic Freeway playing the hottest dance hits from the 60s through today. Bring your lawn chairs, face masks, hand sanitizer, and snacks. This is free community concert will be held out front of the Township Municipal offices. Come relax, take in the fall colors, enjoy the crisp fall air, plenty of room to physical distance, and welcome the cooler weather. The Chesterfield Township Senior Center is still closed and will remain closed in accordance with all executive orders. Engage with us through our Facebook pages. The Leisure Service Department encourages you to visit our website at parks.chesterfieldtownship.org or Facebook pages to stay up to date on activities. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd just like to make an announcement for the public as well as the board. We've been getting several phone calls into the office this week of individuals looking for a ballot for the November general election. Please be advised that the ballots have yet to be printed. They will not be available any earlier than September the 19th. There is a chance they may be available a little earlier than that, but we do not expect ballots to arrive here from the county clerk until around the 19th of September. The first mailing of those ballots will not occur until the end of September. So if you are looking for your absentee ballot, you've returned a completed absentee ballot application to the clerk's office, we will be mailing out those mass ballots at the end of September. No ballots will be available prior to September the 19th. Thank you.
Any further boards? Members with update. How about you, Trustee Vosberg, in virtual world? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 6 is the consent agenda.
Item number 6, the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of August 11th, 2020. Item 6B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. And item 6C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Item 6D, approve a request from the Public Safety Department to purchase equipment for the recently hired part-time firefighters from Apollo Fire Equipment in the amount of $26,602.67 from GL number 205336741.
Madam Clerk, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I don't know that we need to remove agenda item A to make the addendum request, or can I just make the addendum request as part of the consent agenda?
It'd be cleaner if you did, I think, so we can get the wording right.
Okay, so I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of consent agenda item A.
Or B, you mean, right?
Sorry, yes, B.
The agenda. Motion by Trustee Joseph.
Support.
Support by Clerk Barry to approve the consent agenda minus item B. Discussion. Comments from the public.
I got a quick question. So the motion that Trustee Joseph and Clerk Barry are talking about, we're just going to have it as an addendum later on down? Is that what we're doing, or how are we doing?
We'll be approving, we're approving the consent agenda right now. We will be discussing the actual agenda next, and then we'll hammer that out at that point.
Okay, all right. Just one
Any further
clarification.
discussion on the consent agenda, item A, C, and D? Motion by trustee Joseph, support by clerk Barry, to approve the consent agenda, item A, C, and D. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson. Aye. Trustee Demink. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Item 6B, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of an addendum to the agenda, item 8, and that is a motion to approve the township attorney's involvement with the Cannabis Committee for the purposes of formulating an ordinance involving licenses.
Motion by clerk or by trustee Joseph,
Second.
support by clerk Barry. Oh, wait a minute, over here. To approve the agenda with the addition of item 8A, and clerk Barry, I don't know if you could read me back the motion, or trustee Joseph, if you could read it back.
I have it not quite verbatim, but I have that item 8A is to direct the attorney become involved with the Cannabis Committee for the purpose of crafting an ordinance. And do you want any other additionals?
For the purpose of drafting an ordinance as it relates to cannabis licenses.
As it relates to cannabis licenses.
Discussion.
Just pointing out that agenda item is very vague, trustee Demink, so that you will have every opportunity to see what that ordinance looks like before you take a vote on it. So the request is for the board to approve the engagement of our attorney to help us draft an ordinance that we can all agree with. Again, there's no approval of marijuana at this point, or the going forward of authorizing licenses of any sort. What we're asking for is the attorney to bring us the ordinance that we can then bring to the board and discuss. Option 1, if you will, is still always available at that time, and we're making no decisions as it relates to the opt-out of the current cannabis licenses that we adopted over a year ago.
That was my intent when we created the Cannabis Committee coming up on 2 years ago. We created the committee and we opted out of the recreational piece like most other municipalities did. And that Cannabis Committee was created for 2 years. And the intent was for that committee to come back with a recommendation as a committee, which is essentially what that is. That'll be what the intent of the Cannabis Committee was. And I think it's about time we have an action item on the agenda. So I support amending the agenda to discuss that item.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Comments from the public? Motion by trustee Joseph, support. What about you, Kathy Vosberg or trustee Vosberg in virtual world? Maybe just raise your hand every once in a while so I can.
No, I'm ready to vote.
Okay. Motion by trustee Joseph, support by clerk Barry to approve item 6B, approval of the agenda as with the addendum. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Demink.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. The consent or the agenda is adopted. Item 7 is the regular agenda, 7A.
Item 7A is a request by the Township Clerk to adopt resolution number 2020-31, a resolution to support to reopen Michigan ice rinks.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by clerk Barry. Support by Supervisor Echevetti. Discussion. Clerk Barry, I don't know if you would like to read it into the record or discuss your.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I would. Resolution 2020-31 is a resolution to reopen Michigan ice rinks. Minutes of a regular meeting of the Township Board of the Charter Township of Chesterfield, County of Macomb, Michigan, held in the Township Municipal Offices on August 25th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Whereas Governor Whitmer, in an attempt to protect the public health and welfare as it relates to COVID-19, signed executive orders mandating that ice rinks and other similar facilities be closed throughout Michigan. And whereas the closure of ice rinks is causing considerable hardships on both ice rink operators and the athletes who utilize these facilities. And whereas Michigan athletes who rely on these facilities have no other option for training and ongoing skills development. And whereas continued closure of Michigan ice rinks may deny an entire generation of young Michigan athletes, some from our local community, their ability to secure college scholarships or professional contracts. And whereas U.S. figure skating and USA hockey have worked together to put out a 17-page return to the rink manual to help streamline policies and procedures to operate safely. And whereas Michigan ice rinks and arenas already have these procedures in place and are ready to open their doors safely as rinks in 45 other states have. And now therefore be it resolved by the Township Board of the Charter Township of Chesterfield, Macomb County, Michigan, that we request Governor Whitmer reopen ice rinks throughout the state to support the survival of these facilities for both the economic recovery of their management and to support the hopeful futures of our Michigan athletes and their families.
Comments from the board. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I see the merits of what you're talking about as far as the student or the young athletes, et cetera, using these places, but I'm just thinking closest rink to Chesterfield's Gordie Hall Hockey Land at Masonic and Harper, and it's been gone about 45 years. There are no arenas or ice places in Chesterfield Township. I'm kind of concerned more after reading an article by Mitch Album in the Sunday Free Press. He's talking about how operators of theaters could open up their venues now safely. Also, your neighborhood gyms that are all buttonholed with the same guidelines, they could open up too. These businesses are paying taxes and they don't have any income. They could provide activities for our residents and our citizens if they could be open too. I would be more inclined to support this arena piece here if we'd also include those other venues too, as we try to enlighten our governor. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? I'll go to Trustee Joseph and then Treasurer Lefata.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm a big fan of hockey, big fan of the guy that's in our audience tonight, and I would love to see the rinks open too, but I am confused as Trustee Anderson is talking about. This seems like more political theater. We're Republicans, the governor's a Democrat, talking about opening hockey rinks when we don't have any hockey rinks. Seems like we're missing opportunities for things that we could be doing here in the township for things that affect people in this township. So I know that the maker of the motion enjoys going up to the Capitol and protesting and talking about the governor getting a haircut when nobody else can. But this is political theater, and I would really like to get away from that. And let's look for things that actually impact our residents instead of getting on soapboxes and talking about resolutions for businesses that we have none in the township. This is kind of silly, and it's a waste of time. And I really don't appreciate being part of a, attack on the governor. There's enough issues going on. Us weighing in on ice rinks is, it just seems like, again, political theater and a complete waste of time.
Treasurer Lefata.
I'm kind of in agreement. There are no ice rinks in Chesterfield Township. No direct benefit to any of the owners of ice rinks in Chesterfield Township. I'd be more inclined to support this resolution if it was amended to add gyms and movie theaters within Chesterfield Township. I don't see this directly helping any of our businessmen in Chesterfield Township. I think we're more inapt to be in tune to what's better for our residents than what's better for what's outside Chesterfield Township. We need to think of our own first before we worry about what goes on outside of our township. And I think if I was going to support this, it should be amended to add gyms and movie theaters, which would be more pertinent to the township. Thank you.
Trustee Demink.
I sort of agree with Trustee LaFata and Trustee Joseph. If Clerk Berry would amend it to add the gyms and theaters, my son's a big hockey player. He's been playing ice. He's done charity games with other PDs. He did one earlier this year, right before COVID hit. And, you know, I know he's missing the ice, although I also have some guys at work where their kids played. I don't know how they played, but I know they've played. I don't think they're going in locker rooms. They're just hitting the ice and being that way. So, yeah, I love hockey. My kid loves it. I'm sure, you know, but I also think there's gyms. I know there's a lot of guys that work out. There's people that want to work out. So, I mean, if you would do that, I'd support it. If you add gyms and theaters, you know, just add those two, because, you know, we got a lot of gyms in Chesterfield that are closed, and, you know, we've got the theaters. I mean, I'm all for hockey, but if you would add that, I'll give you my support, man.
I'm going to go to Trustee Fosberg.
There are people in the community who do use ice rinks. So even though we don't have an ice rink here in Chesterfield, there are people who use them. And this resolution cites the 17-page return to rink manual. And if you read that, it's very responsible steps taken to open and to consider how to use the skating rink. So I think this resolution in and of itself is fine. I personally would like to see other things added to it as well. Thank you.
A quick one by me before I pull it over to the resolution drafter. Trustee Joseph, I understand your comments. When I served in the legislature, there were a lot of symbolic resolutions that we did over and over and over again. So you come down here to the local level, yes, we haven't had a whole lot of these, but you have an issue that the clerk is very passionate about. There might be an issue that one of us is really passionate about, and these are important resolutions. And all the other things, I'm very frustrated with the Michigan football season and in sports and everything else that's going on, just like a lot of you are, gyms, movie theaters. There's nothing saying that those resolutions can't come forth by a member of this board that's equally as passionate about it. I don't know if I would support taking this specific resolution, which sounds like it's a coordinated effort across the state to try to get this specific industry back up and running, and amending this now on the fly. I don't know if it would make sense. I don't know if it'd make a difference, but I would support any and all passionate resolutions that would urge upper levels of government to change. This is a tool that we have. We have not used it very often. I don't think we should use it very often. But at the end of the day, we are all elected members of this board, and if the clerk wishes to bring this resolution forward, she has every right to do so. Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I appreciate it. And I can understand certainly my colleagues' concerns, and I agree. I think that everything should be open throughout Michigan. A couple things I'd like to address. First, this is not in any way any type of negative on Governor Whitmer. I think she has done her very level best to try to look out for what she feels is the safety and welfare and public health. And she's done that, I think, as best that she feels she can do it, and she's taken the steps necessary in order to do that. So absolutely no slight. In fact, it's an olive branch in my mind to the governor, recognizing that that's what she's trying to accomplish, except for what we would like her to consider is that we can actually work cooperatively with her to do that. There are residents in our community. There are literally hundreds of hockey families, skating families, figure skating families, of young hockey players and figure skaters in Chesterfield Township who have asked if I would bring this forward. One of our residents who's here tonight, and I hope you'll be able to hear from her, is one of our residents who is a managing partner at an ice rink. This has impacted her ability to work with her students and those who she works with and trains, and her business. So I think hopefully you'll be able to hear from her. She's kind of been spearheading this effort. And it was actually a discussion that I had with her that prompted this, as well as other families whose children rely on this for not only their future careers, but college scholarships. We have students who cannot train, and they cannot do it any other way. There's young athletes who cannot train anywhere. And those who are in hockey or figure skating, they can't go outside. There's no other facilities for them to train in. And for them to stop their skills development at this time, when some of them are on the cusp of receiving D1 college scholarships, they can't go to college any other way except through that. For them to not be able to continue to develop their skills, for them to not have access to their trainers, for them not to have access to the facilities that they need, they are jeopardizing that opportunity. And for us to, when 45 other states have approved ways to reopen these types of facilities, which in addition, the other problem that we're having, that these facilities are unique, is that they are classified with arenas like Little Caesars and Ford Field. And if the governor will simply reclassify those, then that would allow, again, our Michigan athletes who rely on these facilities, would allow them to continue to pursue their futures. Some of them for a decade have been pursuing their skill and their sport. And they have a very, very short window of opportunity to be able to take advantage of college scholarship opportunities, professional contracts. And I'll let some of the other folks who are here tonight maybe speak to that a little bit better than I can. But what I do know is, to address the political theater, is not political theater at all. This was something that residents of our community came to me, and we had a conversation about, this is something that's a considerable hardship for them. They're having to go out of state. Some of them can't afford to do that. There's just considerable burdens, and I didn't go into enumerating them in the resolution, but considerable burdens on our Chesterfield families and on their ability to provide those opportunities for their children. And I think that if we can just simply make a statement acknowledging that and send that to the governor, then we are being advocates for our residents who not only manage ice arenas and are involved in ice arenas, but also, or ice rinks, but also the families and the children that are counting on us to advocate for them, because they cannot, it's very difficult for them to advocate for themselves. So I see this as, in fact, one of the reasons that we are elected to these local offices, is so that we can bring those concerns and we can advocate on behalf of our residents. And this is a need that was brought to my attention, and I am more than proud to bring it to this board, and I urge support. I agree we should open gyms. I was in the gym 3-4 times a week, and I miss it desperately. I would love for the gyms to open. I miss my movie theaters. I love, free popcorn on Tuesday up at the MJR. I miss it too. I would be more than happy to craft another resolution for those other industries. It's just that this is unique in that its classification by the state needs to change, and also the direct impact that it's having on our families here in Chesterfield. Thanks.
I'm going to bring it up to the public. If you'd like to make public comments on item 7A, please state your name and address for the record. And remember to press the button at the podium. Hello, welcome.
Hi, my name is Mindy Prisky. I am a Chesterfield resident, and I am also a manager of the Mount Clemens Ice Arena. So, respectfully, the Mount Clemens Ice Arena is actually less than 10 miles from this building that we're in right now. Just Macomb Township, Macomb as it is, has more than 5 ice arenas in it, not including some of them have up to 5 sheets of ice in it. My building alone has a foot traffic of 750,000 people that walk through my building a year. Those people come from other cities, other parts of the state, obviously, other states and other countries, as far as Russia and Sweden and Canada. And when they come to Mount Clemens, they go to Chesterfield, they use the hotels, they use the restaurants, they go shopping, they come in right off 94. That's where they get their gas at. We use stores. We use so much of all the businesses in this whole area is impacted by the 750,000 people that we bring into our building a year. The problem is when we compare it to gyms and we compare it to movie theaters, bowling alleys, the problem is that this is kind of what we're fighting on a state level. When we got classified for this shutdown, they classified us with any place that were fixed seating. So with Ford Field, with DTE, with all those places, we are not fixed seating. My building is 75,000 square foot. However, on the day-to-day usage of it, we would have less people in my building than we have in this room right now. I counted, there were 35 earlier. Some people probably came and went. My building, a sheet of ice, is 17,000 square feet. We can social distance. This room is probably 1,000 square feet. I'm talking 17,000, and I'm asking for 25 people. Less than what we have in this room right now on a 17,000 square foot sheet of ice. The problem is that movie theaters, you can turn off your lights. You might still have funds. Obviously, we understand you have to pay your franchise fees. You have to pay your rent, your mortgage, whatever it comes down to. However, in an ice arena, we can't just turn off the lights. We can't just go and melt ice. You can't just bring ice back up. There is so much, the financial impact to do that, and it takes up to 4 weeks to actually decommission and recommission a sheet of ice. It costs up to $10,000, not including the wear and tear that it does on the compressor systems. So if we don't, since we've been closing down 2 weeks at a time, we've never gotten to a point where we can melt the ice because it's a 4-week process. So we are paying $50,000 a month just to keep the doors open, not knowing when we're going to go. Our emergency funds are dwindling. We have worked with the city of Mount Clemens to secure a line of credit, so hopefully we can save ourselves. But there are 93 ice arenas in the state of Michigan. There are over 60,000 youth hockey players in the state of Michigan. That's like in Mount Clemens Ice Arena alone, I have over 2,000 youth hockey players. And I did my numbers today. 40% of the people that use Mount Clemens Ice Arena are from Chesterfield. That's my Learn to Skate program. That's my youth hockey program, my figure skating program. They come to the ice arena for public sessions, for birthday parties, and probably most importantly to this township, Lance Crews United Hockey plays out of Mount Clemens Ice Arena. We need everyone's help. If we don't get reclassified, the ice arenas will go bankrupt. And like I said, there are 58 privately owned, 35 municipalities, and the privately owned are going to be the ones that drop first. We can't just keep funding at $50,000 a month to keep these places open. And if they close, we're done. Hockey's done. I sent a kid off this week that skates at Mount Clemens to Quebec. 17 years old, left his family. He's going to Quebec to play. We shouldn't be sending our players everywhere else when they could be playing here in Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Any further public comment?
Good evening. My name's Chris Aiello, 49432 Compass Point, Chesterfield. Both my boys played in Mount Clemens. 15 boys in my subdivision that I can count off the top of my head played in Mount Clemens. Everybody in Chesterfield has started in Mount Clemens because it's right down the road. And so there's no reason not to pass this resolution. We all know the political ramifications of this resolution. And then come back next time and amend it and do another resolution. But they are exactly right. Mr. McCarty's coached and skated with 2 of my boys, and we got to open up the hockey rink. So let's not fight over whether we should add movie theaters and gyms to it. We can come back next time and do that too. But she's exactly right. Mount Clemens has started a tradition on the east side with I don't know how many kids. It all started here, then went to AA, then went to AAA out, and we have to travel a long ways because we don't have any AAA facilities on the east side. So you have to go way out to Plymouth or somewhere. So there's no need to not pass this tonight in support of everybody in this community that goes into Chesterfield. And she's right. It's just hollow over there. It's horrible to see. Thanks.
Any further public comment?
Hi. Excuse me. My name's Darren McCarty. I'm not a resident of Chesterfield, although I was asked by Clerk Barry because of our friendship to come and speak. And Chris, good to see you. He's ready to coach with his kids. Now, you know, Chesterfield, why should you care? For a lot of reasons. Let's say and politically, let's just get it, I'm Canadian, okay? So I got no dog in this fight. And I don't care, but right is right and wrong is wrong. You know, what I was taught, and to be very proud of being a four-time Stanley Cup champion for the Detroit Red Wings, you led by example a lot of times. You did the things that other people wouldn't do because they were right. I can personally name of a couple, March 26, 97, but we don't even need to go into that. But what you do need to know is I grew up in a town called Leamington, which was only a small community. And if I didn't get out of that community to play hockey just because there wasn't the best rink there, but it was next door, but I grew up there, but I got an opportunity, then what would have happened? You know, the biggest thing for anybody in your area is if you care about not only your citizens or whatever to pass this bill is because you want one of these kids, and it's not about making it to the NHL or it's making it the opportunity, and we've all played sports and what that has, but you want that kid in 10 years, 20 years from now to say, what if, oh, only if I could have got skating. Well, you know what? If I was a resident of Chesterfield, and the reason it is because it's coming up here, and maybe my opinion is to say, well, at least the people tried, you know, and especially in this day and age, it's disgusting. But to have you guys at least have a conversation and try to do what's right because it's right, and for anything else, that's why I stand here. And anybody wants to Google me, I'm all about what's right and wrong. So thanks for having me, and I hope you do pass this just for the kids and the families and for Grandpa here, that's so he doesn't have to. He knows already there's not a rink here, how far he's got to travel. Poor guy's gonna have to travel out of state and all this stuff, and the impact you're gonna have. They won't have the money to spend here on your stuff because they'll be gone. They'll have to move, just like the Quebec kid. So thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Alexi. I'm a Chesterfield resident, born and raised my entire life. I want to thank everybody who spoke before me. I'm here to address this issue. Obviously, growing up here, 34 years old, lived in Chesterfield my whole life. Like Darren, obviously respect him very much. Won a Stanley Cup in 2016. And I can tell you, throughout the 34 years of my life, bringing the Stanley Cup back to Chesterfield Township was probably one of the greatest feelings I've ever had as a hockey player, and sharing that with the people that put me in the positions to succeed. That being said, aside from that, I help LCU, plays at Mount Clemens Ice Arena. I run a summer program with over 300 people, youth, men's elite, women's. People travel upwards of 4 hours to come play at Mount Clemens Ice Arena. I can tell you one thing, traveling 4 hours, guys need places to stay, guys need places to eat, guys need places to fuel up, like Mindy had mentioned. All those guys, women, youth, they all spend their money in Chesterfield. Although the rink is in Mount Clemens, they spend their money in Chesterfield. I can tell you what, my fondest memories were in hockey. I grew up, I played a lot at Mount Clemens Ice Arena. A number of kids around here have as well. And I can tell you what, I think a lot of people in this room have attended or watched a hockey game. Before, when they announced the starting lineups, they say the hometown of each individual player. I have been asked countless times where Chesterfield, Michigan is. And I take a lot of pride in pulling up a map and showing people where Chesterfield, Michigan is. People come from all over. I've played with a lot of Europeans, a lot of Canadians, people from all over the world. Nobody knew where Chesterfield was until I have a conversation with them. And I cannot tell you how many people have come to visit me here in Chesterfield. Now, growing up, I was always taught to chase my dreams. And with the rinks closing around here, I think we are taking that away from our youth. We are not allowing them that option. And hockey rinks are a little bit different than gyms, movie theaters. I can watch a movie at home. I can get creative. I can train at home. I cannot skate at home. It's a very, very expensive sport. I can tell you that. A lot of people invest a lot of money. That's why I mentioned the story of me bringing the Stanley Cup back to Chesterfield, Michigan, and sharing it with all the people who put me in the positions to succeed. I think by closing down the ice arenas, we are giving a competitive advantage to all the states that have their arenas open and allowing kids to skate. I know if I was at that age, obviously, I'm 34 years old, fresh into retirement, I was able to live those dreams. When we take that away from our youth and we don't allow them to skate, train, do everything they need to give themselves the best chance to succeed, we are creating a competitive advantage in the whole state of Michigan that obviously is nicknamed Hockey Town, and very similar to the people before me. A number of them touched on that a number of people have traveled to Ohio, to other states where they are spending their money just to skate and spending a lot of extra money that could go into our businesses around here. So I ask you to reclassify our ice arenas and get those open as soon as possible, as we have devised. I've been in conversations in countless hours of constructing plans in safe ways to operate like a number of businesses faced with these times. We have had to restructure, and we have had a number of conversations within that. And I think we are able to do that, especially in the sport of hockey, where it's not basketball, it's not football. Nobody touches the puck. Basketball, everybody's sharing the same puck. Baseball, everybody's sharing the same ball. That does not happen in hockey, and there are a number of ways to operate safely. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Hi, I'm John Barrick, and I have been an engineer for 38 years and have since retired. Sometimes the questions get really simple, I think, and that's, we've heard a lot about what the potential incremental benefit is. What's the risk in approving this? Is there any negative to approving this resolution to help us achieve the benefits that we've received here? So far, I can see of none.
Thank you. Any further public comment? And we will bring it back up to the board after. So. No. Thank you. Any further public comment?
I am not a Chesterfield resident, but here's the thing. I played.
I'm sorry. What's your name?
Joe Chap.
Last name?
Chap. CHAPP. Okay. All my life I played sports, and all I know is out of playing sports my whole life, I know that there has been incremental benefits to bringing it to other communities. Like, I live in Livonia. We have 2 hockey rinks. We obviously are municipality rinks, but the problem is with hockey is the ice time is really expensive. So if some of these ice rinks close, it makes it nearly impossible for a family like mine that was middle class to afford to play hockey. So I think that's something you should consider also, because middle class is obviously a huge portion of our communities, and obviously you want to make the game grow, and obviously there's incremental benefits for Chesterfield too. So I know playing sports that have spent money in communities that have had ice rinks and have had a lot of, playing sports my whole life. That's what I've been able to do. So I just consider accepting it, do what's right for the kids. And there's obviously kids in this community that do play hockey. Obviously, Steve Lexi was one of them. So I would make sure to know and adopt the resolution to make sure that kids in Chesterfield that do play hockey aren't left in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Terry Weston, 28605 Wales Drive. I support this. How is this not going to benefit our children? A lot of kids need this for scholarships. Put the politics aside and vote what's right for the kids. I have a lot of friends that are hockey players and figure skaters. They need to be on the ice. So put your politics aside and do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment before I bring it back up to the board? Back up to the board. I'd like to thank all the speakers. I know it's kind of hard getting up here and speaking about what you're passionate about. One thing that's clear is that we're getting very, very dangerously close to the cure being worse than the disease in a lot of instances. And this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation as this extends on. So separating out this unique venue, it's different. It really is. How much can we affect here at the local level? It doesn't really matter. We just got to participate in helping solve the problem if we believe that the damage being done long-term is outweighing the current situation that we're in. So I thank the clerk for bringing it. I thank you all for being passionate and fighting for what you're there. And we'll do whatever we can as a local government. And as of this point, this is kind of all we can do. Back up to the board. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Clarifying one point here. Probably been a hockey fan or a player than a lot of people in this room, and before they were born. One of my great idols is Gordie Howe, number 9, and another person I learned to really respect is when Claude Lemieux came to the Red Wings a few years ago, he greeted him. So I'd like to give you a belated thank you for that. I heard all the merits on why it is positive. I understand it. When I worked at Anchor Bay, we had a select team of hockey players. They'd have to go up to, I think, I don't know where they ended up, Port Huron or something. There's no local place. I heard your passionate speech. I see the merits to it. But at the same time, I hope that we can be as vigorous in trying to get our theater open and our gyms open as much as we do the arenas. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Ms. Prisky. That was a very, very nice, top to bottom, helped me to understand, why this is a significant issue here. The concern I have, again, is as people talk about the damage that is being done to the hockey community and the figure skaters and the businesses, I'd like to believe that we live in a society that, as one person said, like, well, what's the downside? I would assume that the executive order that was issued probably was loaded up with a whole bunch of rationale for why it is a dangerous. Clearly, I disagree with a number of things, but to say that there is, no risk. Again, for the purposes of tonight, there is no downside for any board member to vote against it. If you think I can help you, I want to help you. I mean, that's just common sense. If you think I can help you, then I'm going to do it. The problem I have is, we're 2 months before an election. This is a very, very difficult issue for our community. We have a number of people who believe very strongly on both sides. And so when we have a resolution that I'm not as confident that our resolution helps you, but if it does, I'm all for you. We say, and I appreciate Supervisor Accavetti, your comments about, like, if we believe in this, we should be standing up for it. We know the likelihood of what this resolution and what our passage of this resolution does on the statewide, I don't know. But let's take that tone with other areas in our township too. We have simple problems like trying to get to Lowe's on 23 Mile Road because the lights are so mistimed that we're backed up for miles. And when residents come in and say that, we say, we can't do anything about that. That's the county. But tonight, we're going to take on the governor and we're going to say, we got to open the hockey rinks and so forth. So let's take this same, and maybe we need you, Ms. Prisky, to come back and talk to us about why we need to get to Lowe's for inside of 3 hours on a Saturday morning and what we can do to bring the county, to time the lights. Those issues we just say, oh, there's nothing we can do. 2 months before an election, we're going to champion the ice rinks. I'm all for you. And Mr. McCarty, who got up and spoke, there's a reason perhaps that the rate of transmission in your home country is dramatically different than the rate of transmission in our country. I spent a lot of time in Canada in the summer. We can't get over there. They're not letting Americans in over there. I'm hoping because I love it over there. My family loves it over. We've been going over for 30 years. We go to the Pinery, and we spend a lot of time there. Now they're saying we can't go until at least the end of September, and I'm hoping I can get there just maybe walk the woods before Christmas. So they've instituted some very strict policies over there, but their transmission rate, your country's transmission rate, is quite a bit different than ours. I got you. I got you. I'm glad you're here, by the way. But for the purposes of this resolution, again, if I can help, I appreciated Treasurer LaFata and Trustee Domingue talking about some of the other businesses. That sounds to be a little bit convoluted for this, trying to add on to that. Maybe we missed the mark totally after that. So if we can help, I'm all for it, and I'm a yes vote.
Treasurer LaFata.
You know, somebody said put politics aside, and I think this is exactly what it is. It's political. It seems like we amended tonight's agenda very easily when it came to a marijuana item without any problem because it suited somebody's political agenda or somebody's own agenda. I really don't think it's that hard to amend this resolution to add gyms and movie theaters, which would help a larger segment of Chesterfield's population. That's what the township board's about. It's about helping a larger portion of the Chesterfield Township residents. We amended an agenda item to add bringing a legal attorney in for marijuana. I see no reason why we can't add a few words to this resolution. If it can't be added, then to me it becomes political because then it becomes something that somebody wants to make a note of specifically to bring to the governor. If you want to benefit all of the residents, then you amend the resolution. You don't put the rest of the residents in line for the next board meeting or the board meeting after. You do it today. If you don't do it today, it's political, and I don't think I could support it.
Trustee Domingue.
Thanks, everybody who's come to speak. The hockey gentleman, appreciate it. Mr. McCarty, Zalewski. Hockey's a big thing after hearing everybody talk. I will support this. I will change my mind because I'm not supposed to look at my phone, but I got a text message from Junior who's watching this while he's working. So I just got reamed out by my 32-year-old who's a big hockey freak. So, and all you guys know he plays hockey. And he's done some benefits for that. So is Chief Kirsten. So I'm not here to play politics. I don't, whatever Whitmer does, she does. I really don't care. I know we're only one small community. If it does something, fine. I don't know if it's not, but I will change my vote. I will support this for the hockey. But in 2 weeks, I want to see another resolution on this agenda. That's where I'm going to stand. Thank you.
Any further comments on the board? And I think I'll be looking for Junior's phone number next time Any further comments from the board? Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Supervisor Acovetti to adopt or to pass item 7A as submitted and adopt resolution number 2020-31, resolution of support to reopen Michigan ice arenas. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Supervisor Acovetti.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Bossberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Motion passes. Item 7B.
Item 7B is to approve the introduction and first publication of Ordinance number 185, an ordinance amending the Chesterfield Township Code of Ordinances to adopt by reference the Motor Carrier Safety Act of 1963 by reference as an ordinance of the Charter Township of Chesterfield and repealing any and all ordinances and any and or resolutions in conflict therewith.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Domingue. Support by Trustee Joseph. Director Kirsten is here.
So this is a provision of the Motor Vehicle Code, which we've updated in 2004, which specifically addresses commercial motor vehicle, large trucks, commercial haulers. And what this provision does is it updates our motor vehicle code to allow us to enforce
you'll see the red line version that was presented to you in the package. It will enable our officers now to take a closer look and scrutinize those commercial motor vehicles which pass through the township.
Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Joseph to approve item 7B as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink. Aye. Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion passes. Item 7C. Director Kirsten's up there again. Clerk Barry.
Item 7C is to approve a request by the Department of Public Safety to upgrade the majority of the PC workstations being utilized throughout the police department and select locations at the fire department in the amount of $50,782.92 from GL number 205305970.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Anderson. Questions for Director Kirsten? Comments from the public on item 7C. Motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Anderson to approve item 7C as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion passes. Hang tight for one more, Director Kirsten. Item 7D.
Item 7D is to approve a request from the Department of Public Safety to implement a citizen online reporting portal from LexisNexis and Brazos through Tyler Technologies in the amount of $72,240 with an annual maintenance fee of $23,885 after the first year, and to execute the agreement between Tyler Technologies and Chesterfield Township. This request is from GL number 205301801.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg.
Second.
Support by Clerk Barry. Director Kirsten, maybe a quick.
So what this is going to allow us to do is residents and citizens who want to make a police report rather than call the police station for a minor non-criminal offense, they will be able to go to our website or be directed to a portal from our 911 dispatchers where they can simply make low-end reports non-criminal. It integrates with our computer records management system, and all of their data then can be transmitted to the police station by electronic means without having to have a face-to-face officer come to just file a report for low-level crimes.
Trustee Demink.
Director Kirsten, is this bringing us up to the level with Tyler, also known as New World to us old timers, to where I know Chesterfield's was different than what the county, Sterling and Clinton was using? Are we back up? Are we all like on the same level?
We're getting there. The elevation or the technology upgrade to enterprise, which is consistent with the other agencies, Sterling and the sheriff, you approved that, I want to say, back in January. That's underway. This component is added to this, which really was a result of the COVID response and COVID protections, and kind of gives us a little bit more luxury for the residents rather than having to come into the station or the officer going face-to-face with them. We do it more remotely.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And just so this and the last request, they're both going to be submitted for the COVID refund, COVID plan. We're getting there.
Thank you for clarifying the CARES Act COVID reimbursement portion of these last two expenses. Any further comments from the board? Questions from the public? We have a motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Clerk Barry to approve item 7D as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Item 7E.
Item 7E is a request to purchase additional sand storage with installation at the Township Hall for $94,740.70 from account number 101-275-984 and move the old sand storage to the DPW Disaster Recovery Site.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Treasurer LaFata,
Support.
support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion. Deputy Treasurer Clerk is here. Comments from the board. Questions from the public on item 7E. Motion by Treasurer LaFata, support by Trustee Joseph to approve item 7E as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Akavetti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, no.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 7F.
Item 7F is a discussion of free admission to Brandenburg Park for Chesterfield residents.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Joseph. Support by Treasurer LaFata. Discussion. Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This is an issue that has been discussed by the board in the past, either in an administrative capacity. I know I've had discussions with former Supervisor Lovelock about it, as well as our township attorney and our Parks and Rec department, our Parks and Rec director as well, former directors as well as current one have had discussions in the past. This is something that we'd looked to do before. I would love to be able to do this, and the reason why I would love to either offer free admission or reduced admission, because I believe that Chesterfield residents already pay for this in their tax dollars. They shouldn't be paying again. That was always my theory on the subject. However, when I had a discussion, and I'd be interested to hear from our township council on this as well, but the information that I was given is that we were unable to do that because of the long-term lease that's in place with the state of Michigan and the state boat launch that is present at Brandenburg Park. So if we are going to offer free admission, it has to be to everyone. It can't just be for Chesterfield residents. We can't give any type of break to them for that reason. If I'm misinformed, then I'd like Township Council to advise if this is something we can do. I'm not opposed to doing it, but my understanding is we're restricted in that we cannot do it. So just so that Treasurer LaFata, I know this is your issue, and I want you to know that I support it. And if it can be done, I would support that. However, so long as it doesn't place any undue burdens on Parks and Rec from their revenue perspective, I'm not opposed to doing it, at least for a certain period of time. I think we'd certainly need to put a date certain on it, but my understanding is that is the situation over there at Brandenburg.
Clerk Barry. Oh, I'm sorry, Treasurer LaFata.
I went to the trouble of pulling the lease for Brandenburg Park. The lease was signed on July 2nd, 1996. The lease stipulates that it's for a 10-year period, which is elapsed in 2006. From moving forward, it's a year-to-year annual renewal with a opt-out by either party with a 6-month notice. We should take that in consideration, because some of the investment we're putting into the park right now could be in jeopardy because we don't have a current lease that's any longer than 1 year. We go from year to year. This is the only lease on record. I did send a copy of it to our township legal counsel. If you read through this, it says that we can't make any changes to the premises, remove trees, buildings, anything, unless we get written permission. It does not restrict free administration for residents with justification based on the investment Chesterfield has put in for maintenance and repair. It does require a written approval from the state according to the lease. So it doesn't say that we can't give free admission. Somebody should take a look at this lease, and I think we should do something to protect ourselves since we're making such an investment in the Brandenburg Park right now because, like I said, it's a year-to-year renewal with a 6-month op by either party.
Quick comment for me before I turn it over. The item, this is the second time it was in front of us. It was on the agenda last board meeting and it was removed by a majority of this board for discussion. Here we are discussing it. Even the title of the amendment's mislead, or the agenda item is misleading. Discussion of free admission to Brandenburg Park for Chesterfield residents. Brandenburg Park is free. Brandenburg Park does not cost anything to go into, to use the splash pad. What the charge is for launching boats and for entering in cars. And the reason is historic. I've had many, many discussions with our Leisure Services Director at Parks and Rec Commission, which I'll be turning it over to, I'm sure that our Parks and Rec liaison will have a lot to say on this. Something like this should come through our Parks and Recs Commission. One, update the fees, wonder what they're for. They end on Labor Day. So after Labor Day, there are no fees to enter that park and to launch your boats. It's from Memorial Day to Labor Day. I am all ears to that discussion, so long as it goes through the Parks and Rec Commission and our Leisure Services Director. This was in the mix right when COVID hit in March. We had many, many discussions as a board as to how we can get relief to our residents. And we talked about taxes, we talked about water bills, we talked about all the other things that we can do. And doing a 1-year lapse on the entrance fee for cars was part of that discussion. Now, there was no interest in doing that last March because once we ran through it as a board, it just didn't make sense. I'm all ears for this. However, it does need to follow the right channels. And Brandenburg Park will have no fees for admission for cars in about 12 days. So I think it's untimely and unnecessary. And I think if anything's political, it's this agenda item. Trustee Demick.
So this agenda was brought before us 2 weeks ago and I had it removed. I was informed last week that it's on the agenda again. I said, okay, for discussion. No one contacted I'm the liaison that was appointed by this board to be the liaison between this board and Leisure Services, Parks and Rec, and Senior Services. My director, Amanda Bowers, was never spoken to by anyone from the board until she told me it's back on the agenda again. I mean, I think my fellow board members, if you want to talk about this, you could have talked to at least the department head. We have a Parks and Rec Commission member. I see 2 of them here. They're citizens. It's community involvement. That's what we're supposed to be about. Get the citizens' input. I'm not sure why this is coming forward again. It should be vetted through the director. It's her department. She's done a great job. We all know that, Mr. Joseph. I'm sure you're happy with the job she does. You're familiar with a lot of the internal workings through other means. Mr. LaFata, I don't know why you want to bring this up. I don't go into your treasury department, sir. That's your department. And Ms. Clark, those are your expertise, and I fully understand that. But no one contacted me. I'm supposedly the liaison that was appointed by members who were sitting up here, who had a meeting I know of in November of 16. So I got Parks and Rec. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with library. Okay. But, I got a director who does a great job. Everybody keeps her in the dark. And I have a citizen group of residents who are appointed by this board to the Parks and Rec Commission. They weren't informed of it. I passed out some information supplied by my Leisure Services Director and some letters from my Parks and Rec Commission. If you want to try to push this through, do it the right way, let my director know, and let it go through my commission. That's all I ask. I don't think this is the way it should be done, and I'm against it. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Domingue, just so you know, I asked for it to come back to the board as a discussion, primarily because, well, to be honest, exactly the way you just laid it out, there's a very territorial sort of, there's a very silo farm type atmosphere here. And I understand completely this packet that you passed out. It contains letters from people who live and breathe and die Parks and Rec. And they all say the same thing. Don't do this. Don't do this. This is a terrible idea. Because they're talking about funding. They're worried about their funding, and I understand that. This was never about funding. This was about the residents. If the Parks and Rec department sets the budget and it presents to the board what the needs are for the programming, then the board's obligation is to fund that. Gate fees are just one mechanism for that. But the programming and the direction, I have complete faith in the Leisure Services Director. What I'm concerned about, and the reason I wanted to discuss it, was because it has to be set from the board when you're talking about funding. Otherwise, we're going to get exactly what you're feeling right now, which is this should have come from a Parks and Rec Commission. The Parks and Rec Commission handles the way we fund the department. That's political. That shouldn't be. So the discussion was exactly that. And I said to you 2 weeks ago when it was on the agenda and you took great offense to that, I said it's a discussion, and what I had hoped would come out would be some of the things that we started off hearing, like, I think we have a lease that says we can't. Well, there's a lot of rumor about what the lease says and what the lease doesn't say. There's a lot of this idea. You can go to Brandenburg if you walk. There's no fee for Brandenburg, but there's only a fee for your car. If you want to go to Brandenburg in a car, then there's a fee for the car. That sounds, I don't even know what to say about that. But we've put millions, literally, and we anticipate millions more. When I pulled the contract out and I start looking at the contract, I go, a couple months ago, somebody decided we were going to whack down a bunch of trees. Well, the lease specifically says you can't do that you have to get approval from the DNR before you start removing trees from the property. You can't build buildings on the property unless you get approval from the state. They're the leaseholder. But see, none of these things have happened. And this idea that our residents have to pay for all of the improvements, but then they can't access their park, assuming they want to drive into the park on their $1.7 million dollar parking lot. If they want to put their car on it, they got to pay a fee. And I think it's time to seriously take a look at allowing that to be an open park. To promote the park by removing the fees enhances the attendance at the park. And then secondary to that, we talk about what is the cost of doing such a thing? What is the revenue reduction from the gate? But let's not forget, we were also talking about building a new building to collect fees. So we build a building that cost us a couple $100,000 to take in $5 a car. Maybe the move is to take a look at the contract and decide whether or not we want to open up this gem of a park and allow people to come in, welcome them in, and we don't hassle them at the front for $5 or $30 a year. We just say, come on in, the more the merrier. And then you start getting opportunities for possible business in that area. There's a lot of people who have talked to me about, there's no place to grab a cup of coffee in that park. There's a lot of people that walk that park. There's a lot of people that are out, but again, I don't know that the fee is prohibitive to that, but I'm saying that there is at least an opportunity to have a discussion, and let's leave our leisure services team out of this. Their funding is not at issue. Now, again, if it becomes a general fund supplement, if the general fund needs to replace that, we might not have enough money for some of the other things we spend on. I mean, there's a lot of new people here. I come into this building and I see new people here all the time. And the growing of government here, maybe we stop growing government so big and we turn the park over to the people that pay for it. We turn the park over to the people that have put the money into those enhancements. But I understand exactly where you're coming from in terms of like, hey, this is I'm the liaison but this, being honest with you, completely honest with you, this has nothing to do with the Parks and Rec Commission at this point. The board needs to decide how we're going to handle that park, and using the gate fees as a revenue stream maybe is something we should wave goodbye to. Maybe we should adopt a policy like they have in New Baltimore, because it's very difficult to even access, because so many people from the area are down at Brandenburg, and it's just wide open. And their downtown development authority is right on, walking distance from the beach. Now, we don't have a beach, but there is some area there for a discussion, which is all this is about how we allow access to that gem. And I think maybe we should take a look at waiving goodbye to the fees and supplementing that from the general fund, not pitting the park against the park goers. The commission is not going to lose revenue. That was never in the discussion. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
I'm going to pass.
Bring it up to the public before we come back up for round two.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I want to meet those that are on the Parks and Rec right now, and I want to get on that committee to help steer this, because there are some really good ideas, and that is the gem of this township. I mean, if you walk Brandenburg Park in the morning at 6 or 7 a.m. when that sun is rising, it's incredible. And so, but the biggest really pet peeve I have is that vacant building. That building just sits there, and I look in and there's ductwork on the floor still, and I'm looking at that building saying, at 7:30, if I could have an espresso and an omelet on my way back, that would be awesome. With maybe a disabled veteran in there or something that maybe the township helps put into business in that building. But something, it's empty, and the seawall's falling in. So I've heard a lot of discourse up here, and I don't like to hear it because that is our gem. So I don't know who's on the Parks and Rec here. I'll be happy to come help you. And I'm an attorney. I'll grab that lease. We'll sit down and start looking at it, and we're going to fix up that park.
Just address through the board if you can.
Sorry.
And I'll answer all your questions.
I apologize. It's just my nature. So I apologize. I mean, no offense, but it truly does. That's part of the reasons I never left Chesterfield, is that park. And it's wonderful. You guys do a great job of cleaning it up every morning. The staff is there every morning. They're doing their job. I see the same people cleaning the park. I see a great job going on. So, Mr. Demink, if that's your territory, you're doing a great job. The park is clean every morning, and they're out there working, and they're working on the kids' stuff, and they're making sure everything is ready for the day. I have never, ever had a bad walk in Brandenburg Park in years. It's clean, and it's beautiful, but we've got to support it. And I love to hear the economic issues that potentially could surround that park and support that park. There's a lot of ideas, but first we got to fix it. We got to put a veteran in that building, and we got to do it. So with your permission, when I got to talk to you, I guess, because I'm not real good at this government stuff. I'm more in private sector. I lead head down, and unfortunately, that's my Achilles heel. But that's who I am. So, however I do it, I'll offer my services to sit on the Park and Rec and put my do what I have to do for my community too.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
John, Speaker. My comment is, I agree with trustee Joseph. He's spot on his comments. And I also agree with Treasurer LaFata. We've dumped $1.7 million into this parking lot. We're on a lease. I think we need to be very careful and very frugal on how we spend the taxpayers' money in this township. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Hi there, Sarah Arena, 53058 Rail Creek, and I am the Parks and Rec Commission chairwoman. It is great concern to me that this hasn't actually come to the Parks and Rec Commission. I realize there's finances involved with it, but we should be helping to vet those things as citizens of this city, township. So it's concerning to me. I agree, I don't want to pay $5 to go into Brandenburg Park either. That was actually one of the first questions I asked when I came in, and there are things that need to be discussed and brought up. But I wish that it would have come to us first so that the citizens could be looking at that and then help you to decide those things. We do have to pay for it. There is money involved in those $5. And the beauty that we see when we walk through there, that money is helping to clean up those areas and keep the boat launch in shape. And I don't have the exact dollar amounts. I know those are available as to what some of that funding is. So yes, we might need to figure out a different way to fund those things, but we can't give up that money until we have something in place to help fund that. So it's not a drop the money right now and we have money available. We don't have money available and things will go in disarray if we don't have a good plan in place. So I would encourage people to come to the Parks and Rec Commission meeting. They are open. There is one tomorrow night at 6:30. So that is open to the public and people can come to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
Hello, Carrie Whitfield, a resident, employee, and I'm on the Parks and Rec Commission. Had a whole speech planned out to read. Not going to read it. It's kind of offensive that you think that we don't matter. We do. We're trying to be a voice for the community. And bringing something like this out to a board meeting instead of first talking it over with our team, I'll just say it right from the horse's mouth, putting it right now, we have to make a decision right now, sounds like a political move. And it's not fair to put that into the politics of this. Yes, it's an election year, big deal. We've all heard enough of the politics. This needs to be heavily discussed, and you should include your whole team when discussing it, because we do have a lot of good ideas and a lot of plans that we'd like to see come forth. So at least give it a chance and handle it the right way next time. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public before I bring it back up to the board? Back up to the board for round two. Treasurer LaFata.
I think it's a good idea that we had some discussion, because the first thing I do tomorrow is I get with our legal counsel and try and extend this lease, because right now I think any investment that we put into Brandenburg Park's at risk. And I think our legal counsel would agree with me. I think he's read the lease. I hate risk, and I think that we need to abate this one as soon as possible before we start investing any more money into Brandenburg Park. And, I will apologize to the Parks and Rec Commission, but, based on covert and the park being an ideal place for people to walk and stuff, there really wasn't that much time in between the time I had thoughts and the time I reacted. But in doing some research, which nobody from Parks and Rec or our building department or our supervisor's office, we have a lease right now that's year to year. State, we could invest $4 million into the park, and the state could call us up tomorrow and say, you got 6 months, we want you to vacate. Might not be practical, but according to the lease, it is legal. Thank you.
Trustee Domingue.
First, with regards to the lease, I will admit, I am not that well versed on that lease.
I'll comment on that when
Okay.
it comes to me.
I'm not that well versed on the lease. I just know from when this park was developed back in the late sixties, early seventies to where it is now state land, but I am not verbatim on that lease. I'm not an attorney. That's why we have Mr. Siebert. I'll let him and the supervisor decide that. In regards to the funding and the funds, you know, when we have a budget meeting every year, we all sit out here at the big round table and everybody brings their budget forward. Amanda gives it to me. We sit there and we look at it, and this board approved the budget, what we spent at the parks, and there was never any disagreement from any of the 7 of us board members. Parks and Rec, I talked with a few of the members, hey, is this okay with you guys? And there's never been a problem. I think Parks and Rec has done a good job. Like I say, I'm not the king. I'm just the liaison, but I'm the go-between Amanda and this board. That's why you guys put me there. So I'm doing the job that you gave me. That's why I have citizens. We have the Parks and Rec Commission. I've been at every meeting, I think, except one in the last 4 years that I've been on this board. And I think everyone knows out there, and Amanda knows, that I have pushed for Parks and Rec. And you board members know, I have pushed for the programs, the development, whether some of you didn't want Weber or Brandenburg. I am for it because that's what I hear residents want. And I understand, we control the money. We have to approve what's allowed for each department and what's not allowed. And that's fine. That's why there's 7 of us up here. Mr. Lafada's the treasurer. He controls the money. But I still think this should be vetted through Amanda, my director, and through my commission, which are civilians, you know, appointed by this board. It's no different than you guys had your water service board. You listen to the residents' concern and their issues on that, then you bring it back here. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, just so you're clear, the Water Service Board was appointed by the board for advisory information. It didn't take over the budget. The advisory board didn't decide what the budget was going to be and how it was going to be funded. So again, the letters and the tone, you know, the concerns about the involvement of the Parks and Rec Commission, if this had nothing to do with money, there would be no adversarial tone at the podium. The belief is somehow that there's a movement afoot for political purposes to commandeer the gate fees and then just stick it to Parks and Rec. Nothing further from the truth. The funding for the parks comes from the people, and the people have put millions into the park, and then they got to pay at the gate. So perhaps the funding is done through a budget process, and the general fund covers the cost of the gate. First of all, it was removed from discussion 2 weeks ago, and there seems to be this tone, and this is your team. They don't report to me. You handle the day-to-day operations, Mr. Supervisor. So when people come in and say the team was slighted, and you say this is irresponsible and political and all that, that's not fair. Because how would the team be able to recoup the money if the day-to-day operations guy says we need that money from the gate? Of course, there's going to be animosity, but this isn't about the commission weighing in on whether or not we should allow. We were elected to represent the entire township. Today, we took up an issue involving people who were affected by hockey rinks because it was important to them. But we have an issue that involves our whole region that could use that park. And we say, well, first we got to, and there's nothing in our APO that says that the advisory committees must review an agenda item before it can come to the board for consideration. There's nowhere in the APO that talks about that being a requirement to bring an agenda item for a discussion. And I would imagine that it would have to involve, and I never, ever, ever said that we don't matter, that the Parks and Rec Commission doesn't matter. That's an offensive statement. Of course they do. I was on it. That's how I started. My involvement in this community was on the Parks and Rec Commission 20 years ago. I believe very strongly in it, but it's an advisory board. It doesn't represent the entire township. That's what we were elected to do, I thought. So to say, you've put $1.7 million into the parking lot, you have a very wealthy donor who put in a $500,000 splash pad, and you have a boat launch, and we have a DNR grant that's going to put even more money into the, to say come and enjoy it is worth a discussion. And then the first opposition was citing a lease that expired in 2006. So clearly there's room for discussion. And then the principal area that sounds to me like the one that needs to be fully vetted is, where does the revenue, what is the revenue from the gate? And then how do we capture that revenue? Certainly that should be done, but this idea was discussed when Treasurer LaFauda brought forward a reduction in the water rate as an opportunity to say to our residents who were really struggling financially, we will pass no rate increase, there'll be a rate freeze. One of the counters to that was the removal of the gate fees at Brandenburg. Maybe that was an area that we could help our residents. So now to come back and look at it on a permanent basis and be made out to be this monster who's destroying Parks and Rec, just a little over the top. This isn't about funding Parks and Rec. This is about giving to our residents. Fees are something I think they've already covered. Again, they're the ones who are responsible for all the upgrades. Let them have access to it the way New Baltimore and so many other municipalities open their parks without a fee. That was the intent here.
Are you all done?
Yes, sir.
Yes, your microphone was still on there.
Sorry.
Mr. Aiello, first and foremost, if you want to get involved, an application gets sent to the supervisor's office. And you see, if you weren't here and watching for the last 4 years of the roadblocks and the problems with making progress, now wait till you see what's happening. Shoreline, the buildings at Brandenburg getting updated. Shoreline with a $1.5 million federal grant, and those things don't just happen. The pier is in long-term. We basically have a Brandenburg 2020 plan and a capital improvement plan for that park into perpetuity with a lot of big improvements and additions. That makes it sustainable, and that makes it the jewel that it is. Trustee Joseph should know this. He is on the Planning Commission. There are major things going on with our land use master plan and some pretty exciting things around that area for the exact type uses that you're talking about. If Treasurer LaFauda and I had any reasonable conversations that were for the best to move Chesterfield forward, which we have not in at least 3 years. So we don't communicate. If we did communicate, then we could have conversations like, we are on the phone with DNR all the time. It wasn't long ago, this board approved by the DNR a bottomlands conveyance for the shoreline restoration project, which is going to be groundbreaking in about a month. And it's going to knock your socks off. That building, there's a reason why it's tore apart right now. That's because for 25 years, zero maintenance was done. Those days are over. We all know what this is about. And those of us who have been here for the last 4 years, the same cast of characters wants to throw away the Weber Paddle Park grant. That thing went round and round for 4 years. They almost succeeded. The same cast of characters wanted to wreck our relationship with the Great Lakes Commission on the Brandenburg Shoreline Project. Same cast of characters trying to stop sidewalk expansions. Same cast of characters without a conversation tries to do stuff like this. Come to my office when we can have a conversation. I expect the next board will be starting on a pretty solid path again. And this is, you want to talk about political, that's what this is. There are no fees in Brandenburg starting in 11 days. New Baltimore does not have a parking lot. New Baltimore, people walk to that park. Of course there's no fees, just like every other park. Boat launch And I'm all ears, trust me. When I walked in the door, how can we make that park free for Chesterfield residents? If you want to make that boat launch free for everybody, I hate to tell you, Chesterfield residents won't have a place to park. There's rhyme and reason behind this, and it starts with Parks and Rec Master Plan, Parks and Rec Commission, and not items like this. So I would make a motion to postpone this item until we get direction from the Parks and Rec Commission, which I know is coming, on updating fee structures for 2021. And I would expect that to come November, December, before we start advertising for 2020, 2021. Do I have a support for my motion to postpone?
Support.
Mr. But there's no action item here, so I don't, are you making a motion?
I'm supporting his motion.
I'm trying to understand the motion. I have the floor. Thank you. I just don't understand the motion. This was a discussion. There's no action item, so you're just making a motion to end the discussion?
Yeah, make a motion to end the discussion.
Great. I support that.
Motion to end the discussion. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Accavetti.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Domingo.
Okay.
Trustee Vosberg.
I'm not going to vote on this. I supported the motion. I want to be recognized as having supported
the
it.
discussion because there was no item on the floor. It was just discussion. So I apologize.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee
Aye.
Vosberg.
Aye.
Thank you. Supervisor Accavetti.
Aye. Discussion is
Clerk, sorry, beg your pardon. Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
the discussion has ended on Brandenburg Park. Item 8, addendum, and there is an addendum. Clerk Berry, I believe you have it written down from before.
Item 8A is an addendum to engage the township attorney with the cannabis committee as it relates to draft an ordinance as it relates to cannabis licenses.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Joseph.
Second.
Support by Clerk Berry. Discussion.
Go ahead if you like.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I agree with Trustee Joseph. After more than a year of discussions with the committee, which consists of myself, Trustee Joseph, Trustee Anderson, Public Safety Director Kirsten, as well as our Planning Director, Jonathan Palin. And we have had engagement with the Township Attorney, or he has been present along with our planning consultant, Giffels Webster, and Mr. Rod Arroyo. We've had a number of issues brought forward, discussed. I think we've covered the gamut of everything in between on this item, and I think it's time to now have our attorney actually give us something that we can look at. Everything that we've been talking about has been in very general terms, very informational in nature, but the committee itself has not had, because we had not been directed by the board, we have not had an actual ordinance to look at. So there's really been nothing for us to discuss in detail. As far as actual provisions, everything's been talked about in very general terms. So I think that it would benefit the committee, it would benefit our eventual recommendation to the board, and it would benefit our community for us to actually have something with some solid provisions in it to actually discuss. And then we can start taking a look at which things we want included, which things we don't, how there may be a pathway forward to managing this very difficult and sometimes contentious or concerning issue. But I agree with Trustee Joseph was absolutely right when he said it's all around us. It is going to affect us, and we need to come up with some sort of a policy in terms of how we're going to manage that. And I think that this avenue that's been presented tonight is a way to effectively do that, and I support taking the next step for us to further vet this option so that we may give an effective recommendation to the board.
Any further? Trustee Joseph.
Just to add on a little bit to that. I think you said it very well. When we put the cannabis committee together some time ago, we initially started with the idea that we would bring back to the board a recommendation on whether or not it was advantageous or should we pass. So as we started, we had in mind a very binary sort of task. We were going to come back to the board with a recommendation. Yes, we think it's in the township best interest, or we don't. And what we discovered as we started pulling out all the pieces and looking at what other communities were doing is the fact that there are so many options. Would you say yes if it were 1,000-foot buffer from an elementary school, or would you say no unless it were 500, and in what zone and in what area? So as the cannabis committee has deliberated, we brought in police, we brought in fire, we looked at what added stress there would be on our fire chief, on our police chief, on the operations with different scenarios. So all of these things were part of the discussion, and we realized about 3/4 of the way in, what we really needed to bring to the board was more than just a up or down. It was to fully vet all of the options. Option 3 from the presentation you saw tonight looked to be the one that would be the most advantageous, but as Clerk Berry indicated, without a framework of the ordinance, we really wouldn't have anything to deliberate or make the recommendation on. So approval of this agenda item, what I envision is really some more cannabis committee meetings to bring forward a very specific recommendation to the board. The committee is going to be obligated at that point to take in what we have now, which is the last piece, and that's the legal piece, and bring that to the board. So appreciate your support on this agenda item tonight. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Domingue?
Thank you, Clerk Berry and Trustee Joseph, for your information.
Any further comments on the board before I bring it up to the public? Comments from the public? Back up to the board for round 2. Motion by Clerk Berry, motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Clerk Berry. Basically, it's to direct legal counsel to coordinate with the cannabis committee to draft ordinances.
That's correct.
Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Domingue.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Akivetti.
No. Motion fails. Item 9 is public comment. Please state your name and address for the record, and limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Hi, my name's Paul Manley. I live at 48112 Fuller Road, Chesterfield. About 2 years ago, I heard some news on Channel 7 Action News that IKEA was coming to Chesterfield. And I came to the board and I said, geez, are we getting an IKEA? And nobody really knew for sure. So a couple weeks later, I'm driving down Gratiot and there's a big sign out that says, Chesterfield welcomes IKEA. So I called my kids in Savannah, Georgia and says, guess what? We're getting IKEA. And we never did. And I'm kind of wondering what happened to IKEA, if we are going to get it or if we're not. Okay? Okay, now, I'm going to say a few things that Little Giant Killer. Speak softly but carry a big stick. I'm just wild about Harry. A change we need. Hope. Make America great again. For the people. These are all campaign slogans. And I think probably the best one there, at least my favorite, is for the people. Because it says a lot about the person that's being elected, that they actually are going to work for you, work hard for you, and be there as a fiduciary for the township, state, or local government. And that means you're going to be honest, truthful, due diligence when you need to do it, be present, and above all, show up. 90% of life is showing up and making sure that you do what's right. And there is a person on the board I feel has done that, Paul Lafada. You're not going to be on our board again next term, but I feel that you have been exemplary. And I want to be the person that tells you that, if not for the first, at least now that you know I appreciate your service to Chesterfield Township. And I hope the next person that's elected to your board is half as good as you are. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Good evening, Township Board and Chesterfield Township residents. My name is John Spica. Elected officials need to lead by example. As residents, we should never settle for okay in our elected officials. We should demand excellence from our elected officials. After all, they work for us, the people. In the Code of Ethics and Values that was passed by this board on June 9, 2020, it clearly states, as a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be ethical. This was signed by Danny Accavetti, Clerk Barry, and Trustee Vosberg. Folks, what I see going on as a candidate running for office in this township and as a resident keeps me up at night. This upcoming election on November 3rd, Chesterfield Township is on the ballot. Who we are and what we represent as a township will be on the ballot. This election is not about having a D or an R in front of your name. This election is about people over party. It's about right versus wrong. It's about having a check. It's about having checks and balances in the treasurer's office or an open checkbook or a rubber stamp. It's about ethics and morals versus deception and lies. It's about leading versus following. It's about moving this township forward and not backwards. Folks, don't think for a second that what is going on right now in this township can't get any worse. I'm here to tell you it can and it will. Here is just one example. Our supervisor, Danny Accavetti, recruited, donated thousands of dollars between himself and his family members to his rubber stamp candidate, Elliott, to take Paul Lafada out, a member of his own Republican Party. Danny is stacking the deck and trying to steal that seat and the checkbook from the people. No checks, no balances, a rubber stamp in the treasurer's office. This would stifle debate, put a stranglehold on this township. Goodbye public safety, goodbye speaking at this podium, and goodbye Chesterfield as we know it. Dan's true colors are coming to the surface. Our build and spend on the taxpayer dime supervisor, in my opinion, Clerk Barry, Supervisor Accavetti, and yes, Trustee Vosberg should not be reelected. Yes, even the quiet one behind the scenes. Don't think for a second that Clerk Barry, Supervisor Accavetti, Trustee Vosberg, and Elliott aren't all working together. And just even to further what I'm telling you, in an opinion article that was sent to the Bay Voice from Mr. Lafada, I do not lie. When the debate is lost, lies and slander become the tools of the loser. Your article in The Voice was a lie. You wanted no part in forming public safety SAD. Your plan was to cut OPEB and another transfer from the general fund. I pushed until you told me to get the F out of your office. No lie, I have a witness. Ironically, Lafada, Anderson, and Joseph are the only board members members that fought against the 2020 public safety defunding, not funding. Yes, ironically, Anderson and Joseph are the only board members that fought against the 0.5 mil revenue reduction for the 2020 public safety budget. There needs to be a substantial operating fund balance, and including the restricted fire equipment fund is deceiving. Dan, you did nothing to take credit for public safety funding and many operational changes that resulted in a lower property tax rate and record funding. Dan, you did nothing to bring MedStar to Chesterfield for full-time ambulance services to reduce costs. Accavetti's response: I believe and will continue to fight for lower property taxes. Yes, Dan, you did reduce the public safety millage by 0.5, approximately $4.96 per Chesterfield household to promote your political career. The only property tax that you can reduce is public safety, SAD. Why lie to Chesterfield residents that you're going to fight to reduce property taxes?
20 seconds.
And just be honest and tell the residents the truth. You can only reduce taxes by cutting public safety revenue. Michigan Tax Amendment Proposal A in 1994.
Wrap it up, about 5 seconds.
Michigan Adoption Proposal A, Constitution, which provides the annual increase in taxable values.
Wrap it up,
of
Mr. Speaker.
Is limited and capped at 5% of the rate, which is even less. Accavetti, I think. Property taxes are set by the township assessor.
This is turning into a weekly thing. 5 minutes, please. Next speaker.
That was the 5-minute mark.
Next speaker.
You cut me off early.
Next speaker.
Michelle Merriweather, 52860 Muirfield Drive. I just had a question for clarification. Since the motion failed in terms of directing legal to coordinate with Cannabis Committee to draft ordinances, I was just trying to understand what the next step would be since the motion failed. And that's my question. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Bring it up to the board. Trustee Anderson.
None tonight.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll start with the speaker who spoke last, Ms. Merriweather. The comment, the question of what is the next step? As one of the co-chairs, and I'll probably look to speak to my partner on the Cannabis Committee chair after the meeting. My request would be that we go back into a committee meeting, a Cannabis Committee meeting, and perhaps what we should do is bring a motion that is a little more precise and ask the board to look at a very specific, perhaps and I haven't had an opportunity to caucus with my fellow board members and understand what the aversion to the motion was. It seemed to me to be in lockstep with the committee findings, and it was the next step, which was to bring in the legal piece. So I'll need to caucus with some Cannabis Committee members and my co-chair, but what I would like to do is see a Cannabis Committee meeting sooner rather than later and revisit the request. Perhaps the request tonight was too vague. I don't know, but I do believe we can't leave it in limbo because the alternative will be a very divided community with what we saw happen in Clinton Township and other places. I don't think that it would be wise for the township to simply put our head in the sand and say we're just going to say no because we don't like marijuana. It's not about what we as individuals like. It is about what was passed by the voters of this state and of this township. I also happen to think that there are some different, as we mentioned in the presentation, some revenue that we would just be waving goodbye to, and it would just show up on our doorstep in areas that border our community. So your question was very good, and the honest answer from me, and perhaps Clerk Berry will address this in her comments, is to bring back to the Cannabis Committee this board's findings tonight and ask how we continue to move forward with the duty we were charged with when the Cannabis Committee was formed well over a year ago. I hope that answered your question. Mr. Manley spoke first tonight, and I will take responsibility for the the embarrassing phone call back to the family member to say, turns out we don't have an IKEA. What was happening at that time, IKEA was looking for additional bricks and mortar locations, and Chesterfield appeared as a viable candidate. I think the biggest developer that we have in this community is somebody that I am very honored to have a friendship with. I believe very strongly that his vision and the things that he has brought to the communities that he has worked in, and just for the record, this individual was a part of every major development on M59 coming out of Oakland County, going back to the late 70s, was part of almost anything that you can name on Hall Road. This individual was a part of. And his, I guess, end of career development as he's worked his way eastward down M59, literally and figuratively ends in Chesterfield. And he is responsible for bringing in the Cabela's. He is responsible for bringing in the BJ's Wholesale. And he was really, really hopeful to bring in the IKEA. And I got word that the IKEA people were going to be in the county, and they had actually taken aerial tours and looked at a number of sites in Macomb County. And his development team put together some very interesting maps, and they pitched the IKEA people on the idea that a Chesterfield location would be uniquely positioned to not only capture Canadian shoppers and give them a reason to stop in Chesterfield as they came either south on 94 from the Blue Water or north from the Ambassador on their way west out to 12 Oaks. The idea was to have them stop somewhere in Chesterfield with a national retailer like IKEA. He made this pitch, and his marketing team made a very impressive pitch, and he got the IKEA team to put in some investment in exploring this in earnest. And when he shared this with me, I reached out to Treasurer LaFada, and I reached out to Trustee Anderson. And the pitch that I made to my fellow board members was not unlike the pitch that was being made by cities and municipalities all over the country that were trying to court Amazon. If you remember, when Amazon was looking to establish a major foothold somewhere, cities and municipalities all over the country were creating videos and doing all kinds of things to say, this is where you want to be. I didn't have the budget for that. I'm a part-time trustee, but I felt that I could invest a few $100s in some signs that said, welcome IKEA. And I got Treasurer LaFada and Anderson to drive around with me, and I burned a tank of gas, and I banged my hand about 15 times, pounding these signs into the ground that simply said, Chesterfield welcomes IKEA. And it backfired a bit because I think a lot of people felt they were misled, that somehow there was a fraudulent thing being perpetrated on them, that I was maybe toying with them. But the pitch was to the IKEA people who I knew were in town, and they were seriously looking at possible Chesterfield location. It was a proactive attempt to, and if you recall, it got major attention on multiple social media pages, and it was shared over 100,000 times, and the newspapers were asking about, is Chesterfield going to be home to the IKEA? And the feedback from the developer was, you couldn't have done anything more. Tragically, what ended up happening, IKEA, when they make the decision to put a new store in the United States, it's actually made their inner circle in Europe. It's not and the decision was that the IKEA people felt that they had too much bricks and mortar presence, and they call it clicks versus bricks analysis, and they felt that their online presence was sufficient and not warranting in the economic times more bricks and mortar. So they actually pulled out of a number of locations that they had started in the United States. I gave it the best shot I could, and it was a good effort, but there wasn't a lot of money there. You know, literally a few $100s and some vinyl signs. And an afternoon, it was Columbus Day, so I was home from work, and I went over to Ron's garage, and we banged out these signs and put them up. Didn't pan out, but that's the way it is. It was an attempt. I don't know what to say. Mr. Speaker's comments were very similar to the comments he made a few weeks ago, and I know he's very concerned about the primary. Primary was brutal. I've never seen anything like it, and the coordinated effort to really target problem members of this board, people that are not deemed part of the team. You know, there's a great team here, and the membership dues are this: show up and agree with everything, and you will be a premium member. You get premium all access if you show up. And I come to the office and I say, "That's a beautiful tie you have on, Mr. Accavetti. I'm a premium member." If you say, "Hey, I think that maybe, could I take a look at the map? Could I?" It's, I had this conversation with Clerk Berry many years ago. It's that dreaded trip to Florida in the back seat of the station wagon. And every time you say, "Are we there yet?" the supervisor says, "Don't make me pull this car over. Don't make me pull it over." I say, are we there yet? Are we there? No, we're not there. You will get there when we get there. That's been my experience. Again, not unlike the IKEA effort, there's very limited things that you can do as a trustee. I'm not a politician. I have a job that I love very, very much. And my effort, I put the best effort I can put here. And it's not politically driven. If I don't get reelected as the trustee, I'm grateful. I don't have to go home and explain to my daughter, college is out. We got to sell I'm okay. I'm going to be all right. So I'm free. I'm free to vote my conscience, and I'm not encumbered by anybody higher up the food chain. So sometimes we run into problems where we have some great county leaders, wonderful county leaders. They're elected to represent the county. And what happens if the county leaders who are not represented to represent Chesterfield, what happens if there's a conflict between the best interest of the township and the best interest of the county? I know who put me here, so I have to forego sometimes what would be an easier relationship with the county in my advocacy for my position as a trustee. And that's been very, very difficult. That's cost us a lot of friction. I don't answer to anybody but Mrs. Joseph, to be quite honest with you. And I'm free to do that because I'm not a career politician. I'm not beholden to anything. I don't want to be anything else. I know what I'm going to be when I grow up. It's difficult, Mr. Speaker, to listen to you talk about a stranglehold. I certainly see it. I certainly see what I'm concerned about with regard to how dissension is dealt with. Insolence is not tolerated. You're branded an anti-teammate, and it's not about party, really. I mean, I'm a Republican. There's no secret about it. You're sitting between two guys who will tell you. But on a local level, we're not sending people into harm's way in a foreign land. We're not debating about right to life. We're not. Those aren't decisions that we make here. And so very few things actually fall on political lines. They shouldn't. This should be about what's good for the people of Chesterfield. That's who I advocate for. And I do think that checks and balances are good. The ability to challenge, to speak truth to power, to say that this is not a good idea, in my opinion, and have that be heard. So, I'll continue to do it, and I suspect, hopefully, that we can have a debate in the upcoming election on the issues, and we don't, see pieces that go out about what somebody said in a private conversation and all the despicable things that went out during this campaign. It was really quite tragic. Referring to Treasurer Lafada as a traitor seems to be one of the most hurtful things for me. But as I said, our political opponents were one tiger short of a Netflix series, and it continues to play out. The residents are the only people that can stop that. Thank you.
Trustee Demink.
Thank you to all the people from the hockey community that came out. I appreciate your comments tonight. Definitely a different way to look at it. Like I said, a 32-year-old who's a big hockey player plays at your rink all the time. So wish you good luck. I don't know if it's going to do any good. I also want to see the other businesses, the gyms. A lot of people work out. A lot of guys are looking for gyms that are open. So we need to help everybody. You know, what we say, does it make any difference in Lansing? Who knows? You know, Lansing's a whole different animal right now. I'll deal with my things here in Chesterfield. Mr. Joseph, we've had our discussion. I thought about pulling the agenda item tonight. I really did. But listen, I'll let you have your discussion. We had our discussion, and I can respect your decision, and like you can respect mine. And that's all about all I'll say on that. And everyone else, we won't see you till after Labor Day, so have a safe Labor Day, because we know what happens after Labor Day. Cold weather comes. No thanks. Have a good night, folks.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. I would like to respond to why I voted no on the cannabis issue, and that is because I don't want to see any kind of retail cannabis establishment in the township. We have an ordinance in place right now that I think serves our people well. And the second thing is, this past month, August, it's the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment giving women the right to vote. And because of that amendment 100 years ago, we've come a long ways. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
I'd like to thank Mr. Manley for the kind words. I was mentored a long time ago. I was taught to lead by example and earn respect. I was told if you do that, you'll go a long way. The issue with trying to nix Weber Paddle Park, it's never an issue to try to nix it. It was an issue of it was out of control as far as spending money and what we were and how we were doing it. Weber Paddle Park was never an issue that I tried to stop. What I tried to do was based on data, facts, and scrutiny of the project. We spent $60,000 before we put a shovel in the ground, before we start counting what was approved by the Township Board. I think by the time the park is finished, it will be beyond what the Township Board approved. There's issues out there right now. There's a drawing from AEW that I have in my office. It doesn't have a telephone pole in the middle of the sidewalk, but if anybody goes to the park, you're going to find a telephone pole right in the middle of the sidewalk, and that's a $6,000 bill to fix. So everything that comes out of my mouth is researched, it's data, it's facts, and I scrutinize it. And I try and do what's best for the residents, because it's the residents' dollars that go into these projects. And when somebody contracts an engineering firm to do a design, I expect that engineering firm to understand what they're doing, and there shouldn't be a lot of what we call change orders in the end to run the bill up, because then that means somebody didn't do the work up front. The other thing, you know, the board should consider is I would consider before letting too much time pass, which would be tomorrow, is I would get with our township council and look at fixing this lease, because this lease puts us at risk. I don't think anybody would lease a house knowing that the party that owns it could tell us to get out and invest in a new furnace or air conditioning or put a new roof on it. They want to make sure that their lease was protected and they weren't told they had to get out in 6 months. This is a risk. There's other risk in the township. The nature center is a risk. There's no guarantee that we're going to get a grant for that money. It's a risk. And I've always been taught to negate risk, minimize risk, transfer the risk, not assume risk. When you assume risk, you put tax dollars from the residents at risk. That's not what my job is for. As treasurer, I'm supposed to protect that money. Seems like a supervisor has an issue when I scrutinize the projects because we have what we call scope changes or approved change orders. Has nothing to do personally, has nothing to do politically, because I'm not going to be reelected, you know, for another term. I do have a life beyond Chesterfield Township's treasurer, so please don't anybody worry about me. I'm fine, and I can transition very easily back into my second retirement. The problem is there will be nobody here to dig through the data, look at the costs, scrutinize it, and be, strong enough to open their mouth and say, hey, there's something wrong, we need to fix it. And it doesn't go away with saying I'm extremely confident, because that is not data, that is not facts. All that is a buzzword. So, sorry if our supervisor thinks I'm trying to kill things, but all I'm trying to do is manage them. Management is very difficult. It's an art. You're either a manager or you're not. You're a leader or you're not. You do not get a respect just because you're in a position. You earn respect. It doesn't come with a position. It doesn't come with how much money you have. You earn respect. You earn it from your peers. You earn it from your employees. It doesn't come easy. It's hard. It comes with it by leading by example, being here, doing what you think is right for the residents, and not being afraid to mention it if you think there's something wrong. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Address a couple of things here. First, and that is, Trustee Joseph mentioned that he believes the Cannabis Committee should meet sooner than later. I agree with that. We're going to have a discussion about how, if we should proceed, and what we should suggest to the board. I think that committee needs to reconcile their ongoing deliberations or ongoing work with what the board has chosen to do tonight. And so I think that we will see that I think we will see a Cannabis Committee meeting even before the regularly scheduled meeting in September. I think that makes sense in order to give those board members those committee members, the direction that they need to move forward. Secondly, and actually most important to me tonight, thank you so much, board, for your support of the resolution to open the ice rinks in Michigan. There are so many families here in Chesterfield that are grateful to you tonight, because they feel small voices trying to be heard above all of the noise that is politics in Lansing, and trying to navigate all of that. And they look to us to do that for them. And I thank you so much for being their advocates tonight. Thank you for advocating for our youth that is only hoping for a chance, hoping for an opportunity to compete with their contemporaries in other states who do not have the restrictions that they have. And it may not make a difference. We cannot make that policy change here at this board, but we certainly can advocate on behalf of those families who live here and our rink operators who live here that are just trying to survive. And I want to thank you so much for standing with me and doing that. I can't thank you enough. It meant the world to me. And Trustee Demink, I will be more than happy to enthusiastically support a resolution brought forward to open gyms and bowling alleys and movie theaters and all of those things. So if you'd like to bring it next meeting, I'd be more than happy to enthusiastically support, or if any other board members would like to do so, you have my vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Haven't made comments the last couple meetings, and I was trying to send a message at the last one to specifically a trustee on this board that let's try to turn this into a business meeting, but apparently we're just not going to be able to get there. Integrity is our foundation. Clear processes and procedures. Exceptions are rare and defensible. Those are the 3 bullet points when I walked in the door, right after the FBI left and hauled away the former supervisor. And those are the foundation that I still have today. Miss Merriweather, the next steps on cannabis. This issue is not over. It will likely never be over. It is only a land use issue for Chesterfield Township, along with the other 1,500 municipalities around the state. The Cannabis Committee is still in existence until November 15th, and I would urge them to continue to work. My standpoint on that is, how do we proceed? We proceed with integrity. Period. Right? The first bullet point on the list. Any conversation of games being played, like have been played here in the past, with trades or quid pro quos or anything to do with that issue, I don't care how good the ordinance is. If we don't have integrity coming out of that process, it will not get my support. Trustee Joseph, for 4 years, has sat up here and took shots at the investments and making fun of my state of the townships, for example, and my town hall meetings on high water. With a lot of work goes into these things. A lot of work goes into creating the things that we did here to get the grants, to get the road projects, to get SADs through, to get a new bridge, to get a veterans facility, to get in the conversation for the hundreds of miles of sidewalk that we need with grants, to get a nature center that, yes, of course, Treasurer LaFata, I thank you for your service. I don't want to get into any discussion, but all I can say is I disagree with just about everything you say. And I'm actually very happy that we're not going to be working together next year. Of course, every risk is looked at. Of course, every cost is looked at. Of course, all that is looked at. What's missing is we do not have a genuine conversation up here. Why? Go back to the 3 bullets from the moment I walked in the door. I feel we have an integrity problem. Trustee Joseph, unbelievably talented. The talent on this guy is unbelievable. Charming, well-spoken. The stories about driving to Florida and you're in the back of the seat and whatever sarcasm and ridiculousness. And if I didn't hear from Trustee Joseph that I'm not a career politician every 3 meetings, and the same thing pops into my head. I've been in this political world just about all my life, in and out. And I don't think I've seen more of a career politician than that guy. With the games, with the quid pro quos, and with the never-ending taking issues and complicating it for the rest of the community. It's unfortunate that we're here, but we are here. And I'll continue with integrity, clear processes and procedures, and those rare exceptions moving forward. And hopefully, just the shots of the ridiculousness ends. Next agenda item is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Trustee Demink, support by... Support.